Well, welcome to another episode of Rim Shots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk right here on the Rock Rage Radio Network. And I have a gentleman here that you're going to recognize because you see, I like to joke around with him that you can put a level on his toms and it would go bubble center, man. He's got the flattest drums I've ever seen in my life, and I play them flat. Mr. BJ Zampa. I'm from Dawkin. Correct? Yeah. So how's she going? You're in the mighty Connecticut area?
Yeah, it's fall. It's depressing for me. It's probably not much. Where are you at? You're in
Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I'm north of you.
So it's similar.
Very
I
similar.
think you're a little colder than we are.
We've been really lucky the last couple of years. We haven't got a lot of snow.
Neither have we.
So we'll take that.
But it's getting close, I have a feeling.
Well,
2 years without a lot of snow, what's coming.
I got up today and I actually had to replace the hoodie with the lined hoodie. So there you go. But I remiss. First question I want to ask you off the bat, because I'd love to get your opinion on this. Up here in Canada, especially in the summer, there's a lot of festivals that take place. And there's a lot of classic Canadian bands. You being close to the border, you'd probably recognize the April Wines and bands like that, or those names. And so a lot of these bands now have, some of them don't have any original members, and some of them have maybe one or two. And you get the, oh my God, it's ridiculous. My thing has always been, hey man, go if you want to go. Don't go if you don't want to go. Walking, I see the video. You guys are still getting crowds. People are still coming out to see you guys in droves. What would you say to somebody that would say something like that?
I as a music fan myself, I want to see somebody from the band. But on the other side of it, I also just want to hear the music. Right. I can only speak for my perspective playing with Dawkin. Okay. Chris, John, and I. Well, John's been in the band forever now, over 20 years. But Chris and I are relatively new. I mean, Chris has been there for 10 years, I think. So I've been there for 5 or 6 years. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, as long as the music is still being kept alive and kept moving, and there's some like we have Don. That's Don Dawkin. Right. He is Dawkin. I think it works. I think when it gets a little strange is when there's nobody there, nobody from the band. I think that's but then again, I saw Foreigner. There was not one guy there, and they were great. I loved it. You know what I mean? I thought they were awesome. I'd go see them again.
Absolutely.
So
I agree.
It's I don't know. I think people look too much into that. I do understand it. I definitely understand it. If you're a hardcore fan, I get it. But life throws us changes, man, and you gotta go roll with it.
Well, people still got to pay the bills, right? People want to go out and play, and they like to play too, right?
Yeah. Here's the other side of it. Okay. There's guys out there like myself. We do this not, we love what we do, but it's also our job.
Right.
So to start a new band nowadays, and try to make a living doing that is getting a lot harder. Let's be brutally honest. So writing your own music and starting it, me and my friends were, and we're probably around the same age, it gets harder the older we get. So I think that, people should support these bands in whatever form they're in now, because eventually they're all going to be gone. You're not going to be able to see a Dawkin. You're not going to be able to see, I don't know, pick one, Cinderella, or Tom Kiefer or whatever. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to see them because they're going to be retired. They're going to be old. Hopefully they're retired on a nice island somewhere and not,
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. On my podcast, this comes up a lot, and I want to ask you. And I'm not the guy that typically sits down and goes, "Oh, I'm going to write a series of questions." I'm kind of a, we're sitting at a bar having a beer kind of interviewer. I'm not a what I would call a scripted journalist, but how does one get a gig in Dawkins like you got the gig in Dawkins? Because we talk about networking quite a bit on this podcast, and some people roll their eyes when I bring it up. Was that an example of you getting the gig because of your network, because you knew some people who referred you? How did that work?
I would say I did know people, but it really didn't have a whole lot to do with it. How I got that job with Dawkins was my old band, House of Lords. We did a show in Liverpool, England. This really, they were calling it a festival, but I can't call it that. It was like a bar gig. It was, I could tell you, it was Kingdom Come, House of Lords, and Dawkins. And it was just how I just said it. That was the lineup. So House of Lords was in direct support of Dawkins. So we played our show barely. The guys. It was a strange situation. Let's just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, long story short, I met Mick Brown. And Mick Brown, we were sharing a drum set. Mick Brown came up. He says, "Oh, dude, you play great. I see you've been doing this for a long time, yada, 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 yada." And typical Mick Brown fashion, he goes, I'm like, "Oh, thank you." He got me. I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much. I'm a big fan, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Yeah, good. Now get out of here." The drums
Yeah.
out. So, but, from that point on, he knew he was going to be doing Ted Nugent gigs. And, it must have been maybe a month or two after that show in Liverpool that I got a call from them. This is back in 2007, something like that, and I got a call from them asking if I wanted to come out and audition for a tour that's going to take place in 2008. I declined because 2 days from that point, I'm leaving with House of Lords. We're going to Europe. We're going out for like 6 months, and I couldn't do that to my bandmates. I couldn't do it to my band, and the Dawkins camp understood, but they had to move on. So they brought in a couple other guys that didn't work out. I came home from my tour. They called again, and at that point, McCarville was in. So I think, maybe he told them to, give him another call. He's home now, and that's exactly what happened. And I drove to Boston, and that's how I got the gig, and so it was kind of, old school in a sense that, if we didn't play that gig in England, I don't think, any of that would have happened.
So timing is everything. Pardon the pun, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So to get a gig like that and keep a gig like that, if somebody was to say, "Okay, BJ, how could I do that?" What advice would you give somebody? Because everybody seems to think that, well, not everybody. The people that know not necessarily think, "Oh, you got to be the best of the best of the best of the best." And everybody that I talk to, everybody I work with, you got to be a good hang first. You got to have ability, obviously, but you can't be a problem, because if you're a problem, you're not going to be wanted around.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, you definitely need to know how to play.
Yep.
And you need to be able to keep really good time. And you have to be adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, people ask you to do things you might not agree with. You want the job? Keep it zip, do what you're told.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how it rolls. And then you got to get along with everybody. With Dawkins, Chris and I have been playing together for years. We're the three of us, well, the four of us, we're all good with each other. We're like a little family. It's so, I think that has a lot to do with it. If you can't get along, or if there's a rub, or if there's and sometimes, listen, I've been in situations where it didn't matter how good you were. It didn't matter what you look like. If you didn't get along with somebody, you're out of there.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. You could be Neil Peart. You're out. You know what I mean? So it all those things that I just mentioned have a lot to do with it, you know?
Um, so you guys are scattered all over the country pretty much, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So when you're getting ready to go out I'm guessing like a lot of bands, you guys do a lot of fly out dates. Is that accurate?
We fly everywhere. Yeah.
How do you guys fit your rehearsal in, or do you? Is it just like here's the
We don't.
songs? Well, okay, I love this. I love this. So how do you get that done?
You don't.
Yeah,
It's I call it personal responsibility. If I show up and I don't know what I'm doing, I deserve to be fired. I deserve to be thrown out of there. And a lot of bands are this way. A band like Doc, and what we're going to go to a rehearsal hall and rehearse? No,
right.
it means I have to know the songs. I have to know my vocal parts because Chris and we both sing. And that gets a little funky, but thankfully, um, Chris it lives in Connecticut where I live.
Okay.
So we were able to, get on the phone and say, all right, what part you going to do? I'm going to do this part. Okay, you sing this part. I'll sing this part. So we were able to have communications, but we also have sound checks. So a lot of times we'll go to sound check. Like we have two new songs in the set from our new album. So we would go to sound check and work up those songs. If we added a new song to the set, recently we had Lynch we were doing the Lynch Doc and reunion thing.
Hmm.
And George would come in, he wanted to, oh, okay, can you guys do this one? Can you guys do so Chris and I would go, Don knows them well, obviously, wrote them. But Chris and I, we, like a bunch of times I could count at least twice. I went in the dressing room 5 minutes before we're going on and learned the song.
Hmm.
Now, with that being said, I was always a fan of Dawkins, so I'm very familiar with the material. So it wasn't like I'm hearing something for the first time and you
Yeah, yeah.
know. So, I had kind of a head start. But it all works out. You have to be able to be, like I said before, adaptable. You have to be able to adapt and you have to be able to do it fast. There's no time for being a prima donna or no, I don't know, or you can't be that way. You have to be open, fast, and just do your job.
Something I like about your posts all the time is when you go to a show and you take a picture, and here's the drum kit we're using tonight, and it's obviously backline,
Yeah.
and you get different sorts of setups. You obviously probably have the 1 and 1A that you love, but you don't always get that. But the consistent thing with you, and I again, I play my drums. I sent you a picture the other night. I play my drums
Yes,
flat,
you
but
did.
not as flat as you. Is that a technique thing? Is that a show thing? For me, I like it just because I like it. It forces me to use my wrist more, and it forces me to do that. Some of the purists say, "Oh, it's wrong," and I don't go for that. But was that just something? Is because then you have your hi hats very high, which you I think you said
Well,
separation wise helps there
it's
too.
kind of high. It probably looks higher than it really is.
Right.
All right, here's the deal. I record all my drums in my own studio. I'm sitting in it now. Yeah, I don't know if you can
Nice.
see them, but
I can. Yeah.
there's my kit right there. Okay. So what I do is the way my set is set up has a lot to do with recording. And, I've been doing this I've had my own studio since the 90s.
Mm.
And it's changed and evolved and it's different. I just recently upgraded everything. But it started out, with the big 2-inch reel machine and the big mixing board and all that stuff. So I'd be sitting in this basement and I'm like, all right, how can the hi-hat's really bleeding into the snare mic, man. What can I do about this? Raise it up a little bit. Let me put
Mm.
some tape around the mic, around the snare mic, like its own personal baffle. Let me raise some of the cymbals up a little more. Let me get things out of the way of the other things as best as I can. I mean, you can't. My hi hat is probably, I don't know, maybe a foot and a half over my snare. I don't know. It's definitely higher than normal, but it's not as high as it looks because I play my rack tom really low.
Right.
and my snare drum is at my belly button.
Hmm.
Does this make sense? I hope it makes sense.
Well, it totally does because it kind of almost reminds me of an Ian Pace type setup because his drums always look so
Yeah,
high, but when you watched him play, he was all about his wrists and using his wrists. And um, I don't play quite that high, but I find when you play flat, it forces you to use more wrists than arms. So I think it's cool.
yeah. Well, like I was saying, because the tom is flat, I
Yeah.
have the mic in the front of the tom. It's actually further away from the snare drum. I play my tom a rim's height over the snare drum. Follow
Wow.
me?
Yeah.
So the snare
Uh,
drum is that belly, and so that tom is about a rim's height. Maybe what's that, an inch or so? I don't even know. Three quarters of an inch, maybe the size of a rim. I don't know.
but
I
see,
don't know
that's
how
making
big a
sense to
rim
me
is.
now because when you're doing the videos, are you doing the crossover triplets?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense because you're also going over the ride cymbal sometimes too, correct? When you're doing those crossovers, is
Yeah,
that
well, the
accurate?
hi-hat and I mean, yeah, the floor tom and the snare are basically a leg's length away, from my
Yeah,
leg. Play pretty tight
yeah,
as far as snare and the floor tom. The other floor tom is jetted out a little. It's not
yeah.
directly behind it. Is this making sense?
Totally. That's how I
So
set up
when I'm
basically.
doing the crossover thing, right? It's not that far. It's
Yeah.
maybe I don't know. I'm bad with measurements. I don't know, maybe 6, 8 inches away from the snare drum. You know,
Well, what you're
so
saying here, I think, is important for drummers because, and you would probably remember back, if you had if you learned from a teacher and or even piano or whatever, it's got to be like this. And to me, it's about comfort and it's about making sure everything is where
absolutely,
you need it to be, right?
yes, absolutely, man. You have to be comfortable.
Yeah,
Now, like I was saying, this setup came to be from me trying to record my drums. I used to play a big kit,
yeah.
a bunch of rack toms and concert tom, huge double bass, three in the front, another three on the side, two floor toms, a gong bass drums, I had another bass drum. It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
And try miking this stuff.
Right.
Oh my God, this is bleeding into this. This has happened. Oh, it was awful, man. So my learning process of becoming a recording engineer changed how I play the drums and how I approach playing drums. So for me, oops, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
For me, I benefited from, I believe, from learning audio engineering techniques.
It's like we rehearsed this ahead of time because as you were talking about some of that, I did a session a number of months ago, and the guy that recorded it with me was a drummer as well, and he plays country. And we sent the stems over to the producer that was actually producing the whole song, and he comes back and he goes, "There's snare bleeding in the kick drum, and there's kick drum bleeding in this," and it was just like, "What's he talking?" And then we figured out he was only used to mixing drum apps. He wasn't used to
Ah,
mixing live
yeah,
drums.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so and this is going to be really geeky, but we had to go down to like a 2 bus format and send him that because that's the only way he could work with it. Do you run into that with people? Like, are you recording other people as well? Like, do you produce
I do.
people? Yeah,
I do. I have in the past. It's usually friends of mine. Like I'm not in business,
right.
you know, but like I did some friends of mine. They have a band called Live Say, and I recorded their drummer came to my place. I recorded them. Um, I recorded their bass, their bass player, their key. Actually, I did the whole thing. Greg did his guitars on his own. That's the guitar player.
Uh-huh.
But so yes, I have done that. It's not something like I said. I'm not in the business of being a commercial recording studio where you bring your band over here. No, I'm in literally in a room that I built out in my garage.
Nice. Sometimes they're
So
the best, though. Sometimes they're the
yeah,
best
yeah,
sonically,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, for me, this works.
Yeah.
So when I'm behind the drums, I could see the monitor. I bring my mouse over there. Oh, let me do it again. Let me do it. And I'm able to do that. And I do make every record I play on. I've been doing it here. Um, and this has been going on since I've been in House of Lords since I don't know 2005, 2006. So it's just something I've always done. I just always like recording and before I even put it together, like, oh, I could record myself. Yeah, I was just always interested in it,
Yeah, yeah.
geek.
I love it. No, and I love it. And I got to ask the question because every time I get to talk to a drummer, I always like to get their opinion on this, and that's the sort of the fascination people have with backing tracks and click tracks. So I play with a click track vibe. I just like the steadiness of it. I find that it's always a guitar player. Oh, I'll play with you. I won't play with the click. Will you? You know what I mean? It's always a guitar player that kind of doesn't follow it sometimes in my situation. But what's your sort of 2 cents on backing tracks?
Well, I've done it both.
Okay.
With Dokken, we're totally organic. There's no click tracks live. There's no backing tracks. What you get is what you see is what you get, and that's it.
Yep.
Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's not. That's rock and roll to me.
Yep.
And I love that. It's dangerous. It's you just don't know what's going to happen. Don wants to tell us to stop so we could talk to the crowd. We could stop on the dime. Okay. Now, playing with clicks live, that there's nothing wrong with that and having some backtracks. I think once you get to the point where the singer's not singing,
Right.
nobody in the band is singing, once it gets to a point, like if you have a keyboard on there and you don't have a keyboard player and you have two songs, that is, I have no problem with that.
Hmm.
Um, but like I said, once you get to the point where somebody's, doing the Milli Vanilli thing, not singing, and they're
Yeah.
just like lip syncing on stage through the whole show, I have an issue with that. I do. I don't think people are, nowadays people don't seem to care. I mean, you
I
get
know.
people on the internet, calling bands out. Kiss was called out, Motley Crue was getting called out. You know what? The people are paying to go to the show. I don't know if these bands are doing that or not. Who am I to say? I don't know. But if you like the band and you want to go and you don't really care, then you should go and you shouldn't
Mhm.
care and you should just go and enjoy yourself. This thing where people are getting called out all the time. I don't know, man. It's kind of odd to me. It's like, and it goes back to what I just said before. Eventually, all these bands are going to be gone. You're not going to be able to see them.
Yep.
So you should probably enjoy what you are able to see in whatever capacity that is for now. Um, and if you don't like that, well, then you don't go. It's that simple. You just don't go to the show if you don't like
Well,
that sort of thing.
and you brought up another people for whatever reason. I mean, let's think about this for a second, right? You're playing in a band, especially if you're a drummer. You're literally playing football for an entire career because it's a very physical
Yes, it
instrument,
is.
right?
Yeah.
You know it, I know it, anybody that plays it knows it. So these people that are playing drums, playing bass, running around stage, I mean, it's just like Tom Brady having to retire or Brett Favre. Eventually, your body just will not do what it used to do. You can make adjustments. And so people don't understand that. So you make a great point that if you still want to see some of these acts, this is what you get. Go or don't go. It's your choice.
Yeah, because they're not gonna be around forever.
Right.
This isn't, we have a certain life expectancy,
Yep.
but let's be real, especially I'm in Dockham because Mick Brown said he couldn't play anymore.
Yep. Yep.
Not
Truth.
that he just had enough and quit. Well, he did, because he physically was having pain,
Yep.
so that's why I have that gig. If that wasn't the case, it wasn't like, oh, Mick's out, we're bringing you. I would have never had this job.
Yeah.
I would never be playing in Dockin if Mick didn't say, I've had enough, man. My arms hurt, my knees hurt, my legs hurt. I'm done. The guy beat the shit out of a drum set for 40 years.
Yeah.
I'm right behind him. I'm no
Well,
spring chicken either, but I try to, and I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just speaking about
yeah.
myself now. I try to eat healthy. Um, I walk every day for a couple of miles at least. I'm out with my dogs. I try to stay active. It's not always possible living in New England. Once that snow
Yeah.
hits, I'm not walking 2 miles.
No, absolutely.
I'm staying
Absolutely.
inside. You know how this is,
Yeah.
so it gets a little harder, so, and the older you get, the harder it gets. And then, like Doc, and like this year, poor Don, he broke his foot. So we
Oh,
we we were on a very light schedule this year. So he didn't want to not work at all, but when you're 70 years old and you bust your ankle and you have to have surgery, you don't come back as fast.
no, that's fair.
So we've been on a light schedule, and honestly, it's been wreaking havoc with me because, like, we'll play, 3 shows in a month, and then we're off a month, and I'm like,
Well, and
it's just
I was going to say from because what a lot of people don't realize is there's a routine when you're on the road. Like you guys, everything is kind of a set routine, like sound checks to lobby calls to however you're getting around, right? And a lot of people don't understand that.
right.
And that would be food too. Like you guys are eating at a set time, set thing. So, what does Mr. Zampa do with himself when he's off for a month?
Well, that's a good one. It depends what time of year it is. I can never leave things alone. I'm always like during COVID, for example, that was a nightmare for me because
Yeah.
I've been playing drums professionally since I was 13 years old. I've always had a gig. I'm always playing. It might not be pretty, I'm not saying, I played with bands like Dokken when I was 13, but I always playing drums in bars since I was 13. So that's all I really know. So COVID hits, everything's shut down, obviously. I'm looking at my front lawn and it's driving me nuts. I'm seeing weeds. It just looked awful. So I killed my whole lawn and replanted everything. And then it turned into the trees. I don't like the way this tree looks. So now, in the warmer months, I'm out in the yard. In the colder months, I'm in the house painting, knocking walls down. I'm doing something. You know what I mean? It's just I can't sit still. Uh, I do record a lot,
Mhm.
but it's different than playing a gig. You don't get that stamina we're recording. Because I'm a firm believer, 2, 3 shots at it, come back tomorrow. Because
Yeah.
you want it to be fresh and spontaneous and lively. But yes, I always, I walk a lot. I'm into car. I love cars. One of my this is funny. One of my hobbies is I go to car dealerships and I drive exotic cars. Can't afford to have, certain cars, but I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna try the thing. You
Do
know
they
what
make
I
you
mean?
put a
I want to
deposit on
drive a
that?
Ferrari. I'm gonna go drive one.
Do
You
they make you
know?
put it? There used to be a car. I lived in Toronto for 7 years, and there used to be this exotic car dealership at the west end of the city, and they would let you drive the car, but you had to put a $10,000 deposit on it. Like you didn't get it. They give you it back
I don't
afterwards.
go that far. I don't
Yeah,
go that far. No, I
yeah,
don't. But more what I'm saying is I love like Jaguars and Corvettes and you know that kind of thing. Muscle muscly car, hard. Like classic cars. I
yeah.
love. So it's kind of a thing. I don't own one. I want to. But I had to buy a truck instead to move my drums. So
Yeah.
I
I feel your pain, brother.
yeah, you know where I'm
Yeah,
going. But
I
when I
do.
was a kid, I always had a car. I always had something. I had a Camaro, I had a Le Mans, I had a Mustang, that kind
Um,
of thing.
what is it about your part of the world where you live? There's so many, like, I think of, there's yourself, there's Matt Stars from Connecticut, Vinnie
Yeah.
Vincent was from Connecticut, just a lot of talent comes out of that state. Why do you think that is?
Well, let me explain something. A lot of people might not even know where Connecticut is. Connecticut is between Boston and New York City.
Hmm.
And if you drive an hour in any direction in the state of Connecticut, you're not in the state of Connecticut anymore. So yes, there's a lot of talent that came out of here. I think a lot of it has to do with when I was a kid. I just told you, I started playing in clubs. I was 13. My mother had to write a note. I had to get it notarized by a notary of the Republic, saying that it was okay for me to be there. It was very competitive. Bands, if your band was no good, you weren't getting a job. You had to be good to play. And there were so many bands.
Hmm.
And you can make a living in the state of Connecticut playing music in the late 70s, early 80s, I'm talking about, all the way into the early 90s. It might not have been pretty. You're going to have to travel more later on in the 90s. It became more of a regional thing or more than a state thing. But used to make a pretty good living. Bands would have their own trucks, their own PAs, their own light show. I mean, you'd have a three-man crew working. It was crazy. But there was money and people were coming out. And here's the thing, because there was so much competition, it made the bands that much better. Nowadays, and I'm going to be careful here because I don't want to put anybody down or
Hmm.
aspiring musicians down or anything, but the business has changed.
Hmm.
Now it's how many people you could get to come to your gig. I'm talking strictly like on local level there. So in the state of Connecticut, what has happened is you get the band that might not necessarily be very good getting the gig over to better band because they have more friends. When you do that, after time, what happens is Joe comes in with his girlfriend. He wants to go take her out for the night on a date. You walk into the local rock bar and there's some band playing. The place is jam packed. The band is awful. Joe and his girlfriend are leaving. They're never going to go see another live band ever again unless it's at the
Hmm.
Coliseum, somebody they know. That's what happened here in my state. So a lot of the rock clubs closed down and they're gone because they followed this uh, way of doing business. But back to your question, I know I'm going a long way around, but
Nope.
because of that competition and wanting to work, and you have to be really good to work, it's produced great musicians out of here.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, it goes on from Michael Bolton all the way to, some of the heaviest metal bands you'd ever know, Um, I feel blessed that I was born here, and able to be in that situation where I was able to learn from obviously I was very young playing, like I said, 13. I play with older cats all the time.
Hmm.
So you learn from them what to do, what not to do. So I think a lot of that has to do with why there's so many musicians from this area that have found some level of success.
Um, my last question, because I know you probably it's probably kept creeping up on supper time there in your neck of the woods. What's
I
That was awesome. What's going on? What's going on with Dawkins for the rest of 2024? And do you guys have plans into 2025?
Nothing that I know of yet in 2025. We have
Hmm.
3 shows in November.
Oh wow,
We'll
that's
be
good.
in, boy, I know the 9th I'll be in Miami, Oklahoma. And then I think we go to Arizona, maybe on the 10th or, the next day, or maybe the day before. I'm not sure. I don't have a calendar in front of me. and we wind up in Pennsylvania for our last show of the year.
Well,
we always stop around this time because as the winter kicks in, that's why I just put up a post today saying, I wish after Halloween we could just go right to spring again. You know what I mean? Because the work stops, and I just hate sitting around. It makes me crazy. It really does. So I'll probably, paint the house. Who knows? Maybe I'll make my little studio bigger or something.
You'll figure out something to do. BJ, I want to thank you for doing this, man. You were super responsive when I reached out to you. It's been a lot of fun meeting you, and I hope to see Dawkins really soon. When's the last time you were up in Canada?
We were supposed to come to Canada, I want to say about 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I went and I got my passport renewed because they tell you in the United States that there'll be an expiration date on the passport saying that like July 29th, which is my birthday. Thank you. It'll say, renew your passport 6 months before the expiration date. Otherwise, it's not usable. That's just crazy to me. So I never read the fine print. I didn't know. And we're getting ready, that week to go to Canada. And I saw that fine print and I'm like, ooh, I have to go and expedite a passport now. And so I did all that, went through all that stuff, and the promoter, something happened and the show fell through. And I paid like $300 to get my passport. Yeah, it was something.
Yeah. Well, it's
hopefully we'll be up there. I really hope so.
Well, and you want to come up in the summertime.
Yeah, I know. Really... I used to play in Montreal. We used to drive up from Connecticut and cover bands and play in Montreal. And oh my God, in Quebec. Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Is it in Vermont? There's that little town, Rock Island, Quebec, that goes into the back end of Montreal there. So yeah. Know it well. So I want to thank you for doing this. I really appreciate your time, and best of the rest of 2024, and happy holidays and all that great stuff.
You too. Keep sending me the posts. I want to see videos of you playing, man.
I'll send you some stuff for sure, BJ. Thank you so much.
You got it, brother. Thank you.
We're back after this.